The skies above Zithra shimmered with colors that humans could barely comprehend. Towering crystalline spires reached into the clouds, catching the sunlight and scattering it like fragments of a rainbow. Floating gardens drifted gently between the buildings, carrying the sweet scent of alien blossoms. From above, the city looked serene, but on the streets and in the courts, tension ran as deep as the roots of the ancient trees that grew in the palace courtyards. Marcus had arrived on Zithra only hours ago. His mission was simple in theory: establish diplomatic contact with Queen Lysera and secure trade rights for human explorers. In practice, he quickly realized he had stepped into a world that did not see humans as equals. Zitherans, with their towering stature, glowing eyes, and fluid movements, were warriors by tradition. Every action, every glance, carried a meaning he had to interpret carefully. He had studied the customs beforehand, but no book could truly capture the atmosphere of a living, breathing alien court. The moment he entered the palace, Marcus felt the weight of 100 eyes upon him. Guards with segmented armor and energy blades flanked the wide corridors. Servants, though servants was an inadequate word, moved gracefully, attending to their duties with precision and discipline. The air smelled faintly of ozone and flowers, a combination that should have been soothing, but instead made his nerves sharper. The audience chamber was massive, a hall carved entirely from translucent crystal, sunlight refracting through it in dazzling patterns. At the far end, seated upon a throne of levitating stones, was Queen Lysera herself. Her presence was commanding even in stillness. Her long silver hair shimmered like liquid light, and her eyes, violet and piercing, seemed to see through the very core of Marcus. Around her stood her advisors and attendants, every one radiating alertness and authority. Before Marcus could even speak, a hush fell over the chamber. Lysera raised a hand, and from the shadows a figure stepped forward. Massive, armored, and imposing, he was Kale, the Queen's champion. His armor gleamed with blue energy lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. His expressionless mask made him seem less like a being and more like a living weapon. Human, Lysera's voice was like a melody and a whip at the same time. You have come to Zithra with bold claims, but words mean nothing here. Strength and skill speak louder. You will face Kale. If you defeat him, you may stand before me as an equal. Fail, and you shall leave our world immediately. Marcus swallowed hard. The mission briefing had mentioned Kale, but no report could have prepared him for the sheer size and presence of the warrior. He was at least twice Marcus's height and at least 3 times his weight. Kale moved with fluid precision, and the aura of authority around him made it clear. He was the ultimate test of human capability. The duel was to take place in an arena suspended high above the city, a circular platform of polished crystal that hovered in midair. Crowds of Zitherans filled surrounding balconies, their voices rising in a chorus of anticipation. Marcus stepped onto the platform, his human frame dwarfed by Kale's. Yet he felt something stir within him, a mixture of fear and resolve. He had trained for impossible situations before, but nothing like this. Kale's stance was solid, unyielding, yet there was grace in his movements. Marcus noted the rhythm of Kale's breathing, the subtle shifts in his armor. Humans often underestimated alien physiology, but Marcus had spent weeks studying Zitharan combat data. He understood that brute strength alone was not the champion's weapon. It was precision, speed, and timing combined. The gong sounded, a deep resonance that vibrated through Marcus's chest. Kale moved first, charging with the force of a storm. Marcus dodged, rolling across the smooth surface of the arena. Sparks flew where Kale's energy blade scraped against the crystal. The crowd roared at each near miss, but Marcus focused on patterns, not the noise. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time seemed distorted under the intensity of the duel. Kale's attacks were relentless, but Marcus anticipated, countered, and exploited openings with precision. Then a single moment presented itself. Kale overextended, his left side exposed for barely a heartbeat. Marcus acted instinctively. With a leap and a pivot, he struck at the exposed joint in Kale's armor with his engineered energy blade. The strike connected cleanly, and Kale staggered. The energy pulse of the blade disrupted the champion's systems, and he collapsed, not with a dramatic fall but with an almost eerie stillness. The arena fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Marcus straightened, breathing hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done the impossible. He had defeated Kale, the undefeated champion of Zithra, in one strike. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lysera's voice cut through the silence, low and controlled, but with an edge of something unreadable. Impossible. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, fixed on Marcus. You have defeated Kale, in one strike. Marcus didn't have time to savor the victory. Alien law, ancient and unbending, demanded that a champion's defeat brought consequences. By tradition, the victor earned a personal audience with the queen, but it also shifted the balance of loyalty within her court. Kale's fall meant more than a duel. It meant that Marcus, a human, now commanded attention and respect no outsider had ever received. Lysera rose from her throne, her movement fluid and deliberate. Her presence filled the chamber, drawing the gaze of every court member. "You are skilled," she said, her tone almost reverent now. "But do not mistake strength alone for power. Here, power is earned in more than combat. You will dine with me tonight. You will observe the duties of my royal maids, and you will learn what it truly means to influence this court." Marcus followed the queen, curiosity and caution warring within him. The palace was unlike anything he had seen. Rooms of floating furniture, corridors that curved impossibly, and gardens suspended in midair. The royal maids appeared, moving with disciplined elegance. They were trained in combat, diplomacy, and espionage, a combination that Marcus recognized immediately. These were not mere servants. They were warriors and strategists in their own right. The maids watched Marcus with careful interest. Some whispered to each other in their alien tongue. Others studied his movements as though trying to predict what a human would do next. Marcus understood that earning their respect would be as challenging as defeating Kale. The queen seated herself at a table, and Marcus was placed directly across from her. Food appeared without explanation, alien dishes that glowed faintly with bioluminescence. Marcus had been briefed on their ingredients, so he ate cautiously, careful not to offend. Lysera watched him the entire time, noting his reactions, his choices, his posture. After the meal, Lysera rose and motioned toward the maids. "Observe." One by one, the maids demonstrated tasks that Marcus had never imagined. Some performed intricate rituals of communication, conveying meaning through gestures and subtle movements. Others displayed combat techniques, executing precise maneuvers that would be deadly if used outside controlled circumstances. Marcus followed along, sometimes fumbling, sometimes understanding quickly. Every action was a lesson, and every lesson was a test. Hours passed, and Marcus realized that the queen was not merely teaching, she was evaluating. Each interaction revealed something about him: how he handled pressure, how he adapted, how he earned trust. Even the maids, who initially seemed aloof, began to regard him with quiet interest. One maid, a tall figure with silver hair braided intricately, gave a subtle nod when Marcus responded correctly to a challenge. It was small, but Marcus recognized it as acknowledgement of competence. Finally, Lysera spoke, her voice carrying both authority and curiosity. "You have defeated Kale, yes, but what you are learning here, this is a greater test. Will you understand our ways? Will you earn the loyalty of those around you, not through fear but through respect?" Marcus nodded. He realized that his journey was only beginning. The victory over Kale had opened a door, but what lay beyond it was far more complex. He would have to navigate alien politics, earn trust, and prove himself in ways he had never imagined. The night ended with a quiet walk through the floating gardens. Marcus gazed at the glowing flora, at the shimmering spires above, and at the vast city stretching beneath them. Lysera walked beside him, her presence both intimidating and oddly reassuring. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "you will begin the true work. The maids will serve alongside you, and together you will face challenges that will reveal whether humans are truly capable of leadership in Zithra." Marcus understood the weight of her words. The duel had been only the beginning. The real test lay ahead, in earning trust, in navigating complex relationships, and in proving that a human could survive and thrive in a world that had never known one to succeed. As he lay in his quarters that night, Marcus reflected on everything that had happened. He had faced the impossible and prevailed. He had entered a court filled with beings who saw him as weak, and he had proven them wrong. But he knew that strength alone would not carry him forward. Wisdom, patience, and understanding of alien culture would be just as critical. And somewhere deep in his mind, a quiet thought echoed. Perhaps humans were not meant to simply adapt. Perhaps they were meant to change the rules entirely. The stars above Zithra twinkled, distant and cold, yet full of possibilities. Marcus drifted into sleep with one certainty. The challenge ahead would test every skill he possessed, but for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive in a world that had seemed impossible. The next morning, Zithra's twin suns rose slowly over the floating spires, casting long shadows across the crystalline city. Marcus stepped onto the balcony of his quarters, taking in the alien landscape. From this height, the palace gardens looked like scattered jewels, each one floating gently above the ground. He could see the activity of the city below, merchants setting up stalls, citizens moving in synchronized patterns, and guards patrolling with disciplined precision. It was beautiful, but it was also a world governed by rules he barely understood. Lysera entered silently, her presence as commanding as ever. She wore ceremonial attire that shimmered with threads of light, and her violet eyes held a mix of curiosity and calculation. "Today," she said, "you will begin the work that defines leadership in my court. The maids will assist you, but their loyalty is not given freely. You must earn it." Marcus nodded. He had already realized that his victory over Kale had opened a door, but it did not guarantee respect. Every action in this palace carried meaning, and even a small misstep could lead to distrust, or worse, humiliation. The royal maids gathered in the hall, each moving with the precision and grace of trained warriors. They formed a line, their eyes sharp, assessing Marcus as if he were a puzzle to solve. The tallest of them, silver-haired and imposing, stepped forward. Her name was Serena, and Marcus quickly noticed her subtle authority over the others. She would be his guide, though he knew she would not make it easy. "Marcus," Lysera said, her tone even, "your task today is not combat, it is understanding. The maids will show you the daily operations of the court, the ceremonies, the intelligence networks, and the interactions with the people. Pay attention, learn, adapt." Marcus followed as Serena led him through the palace. The first stop was the communications chamber, where holographic projections of distant sectors floated in midair. Maids moved rapidly, monitoring reports and sending encoded messages. Marcus observed how every movement was deliberate, every decision calculated. He realized that these women were not just attendants. They were the backbone of the Queen's authority, managing intelligence and strategy with precision. Serena approached him, her expression unreadable. "You will manage one operation today. A shipment of vital resources is delayed and we must discover the cause. Use your judgment, human." Marcus studied the projections. Sensors showed disturbances near the outer city docks. He decided to investigate in person, and Serena accompanied him, silent and watchful. As they approached, Marcus noted a group of rogue operatives attempting to divert the shipment. They were armed and organized, but their strategy was sloppy compared to what he had studied. With a quick motion, Marcus signaled to Serena. Together, they outmaneuvered the operatives. Serena's combat skills were precise, striking only when necessary, while Marcus used his human ingenuity to set traps and anticipate moves. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized and the shipment was secured. The maids, who had been observing from a distance, now regarded Marcus with something approaching respect. Even Serena's subtle nod acknowledged his capability. Lysera, watching from a distance, allowed herself the faintest hint of a smile. Marcus realized that today, he had not only preserved vital resources, but also demonstrated the value of human adaptability within Zitharan systems. The day continued with lessons in diplomacy. Marcus attended a meeting with Zitharan ambassadors from distant sectors. The discussions were intricate, full of cultural nuances and layered meanings that Marcus had to navigate carefully. A wrong word, a missed gesture, or an unobserved detail could have disastrous consequences. He listened more than he spoke, but when he did intervene, his observations were precise and thoughtful. The ambassadors left the room impressed, and the maids recorded every detail for Lysera's review. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the palace gardens, a sudden alert rang through the halls. Sensors had detected an unauthorized vessel approaching the city. Lysera's eyes narrowed. "They have come to test our defenses," she said. Marcus felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. A new challenge had arrived. The vessel landed near the palace gates and a group of mercenaries emerged. They were organized, heavily armed, and clearly intended to intimidate. Marcus quickly assessed the situation. While the Zitharan guards were strong, they relied on standard formations. He suggested an alternative strategy, blending human tactics with the abilities of the maids. Serena gathered the team. "Follow his lead," she said quietly. Marcus outlined the plan, using distractions, strategic positioning, and exploiting the terrain of the palace gardens. The mercenaries advanced confidently, but Marcus and the maids were ready. The battle was precise, swift, and calculated. Marcus used the environment to his advantage, pushing attackers into controlled zones while the maids struck with skill and efficiency. Each move required coordination, trust, and adaptability. Humans often relied on improvisation, while Zitharans excelled in disciplined execution. Together, they became an unstoppable force. By the time the last mercenary was subdued, the palace grounds were calm again. Lysera observed the aftermath, her expression unreadable. Marcus, though exhausted, stood tall. He had not only defended the palace but had done so by integrating human ingenuity with Zitharan discipline, a combination that no one had expected. In the aftermath, Lysera summoned Marcus to the throne room. The maids lined the walls, their eyes fixed on him. "You have proven yourself," she said, her voice steady, but with an undercurrent of something that Marcus could not quite name. "Not through brute force alone, but through strategy, adaptability, and leadership. You have earned not only my attention but the respect of those who serve me." Marcus bowed, understanding the weight of her words. This recognition was not symbolic. It shifted the dynamics of power within the court. The maids, who had once been cautious, now looked to him as a capable leader, not as an outsider. Lysera continued, "From this day forward you will not simply observe. You will work alongside my maids, learning, leading, and influencing. Your human perspective is unusual, but it is effective. Remember, strength is not only in combat, it is in wisdom, understanding, and earning loyalty." Marcus felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. He realized that his journey had only just begun. Defeating Kale had opened a door, but walking through it meant navigating a complex web of alliances, responsibilities, and expectations. Over the next few days, Marcus immersed himself in the palace life. He learned the subtleties of Zitharan etiquette, the complex hierarchies among the maids, and the protocols for dealing with citizens and diplomats. Each lesson was a test, and each success strengthened his position. The maids began to follow his guidance, not because of fear or obligation, but because they recognized his competence. Serena, once reserved and skeptical, gradually allowed herself to trust Marcus. She guided him in matters of combat and strategy, but also in diplomacy and negotiation. Marcus noticed how the other maids began to mirror her behavior, slowly forming a cohesive team under his influence. He realized that human leadership was not about dominance. It was about creating trust, fostering collaboration, and inspiring confidence. One evening, as the twin suns set, Lysera invited Marcus to walk with her through the palace gardens. The air was cool and the floating blossoms emitted a soft glow. "You have adapted quickly," she said, her tone thoughtful. "You understand more than I expected. Perhaps humans are not just survivors. They are capable of shaping the worlds they enter." Marcus smiled. "I've learned from the best," he said, gesturing subtly toward the maids and the palace. "And I've learned that understanding a world is just as important as defending it." Lysera studied him closely, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "You are different," she said quietly. "You see possibilities where others see rules. You act where others hesitate. That is rare human. Perhaps it is why you stand where Kale could not fail." For the first time, Marcus felt a true connection with Zithra. Not just as a visitor or a warrior, but as someone who could influence and be influenced, shaping the future of this alien world. The palace no longer seemed intimidating. It was a place of potential, of challenge, and of growth. The next day, a new challenge awaited. Reports of unrest in a distant sector required Marcus to act as a mediator. With the maids by his side, he traveled across the skies of Zithra, negotiating with leaders, resolving disputes, and demonstrating human diplomacy in ways the Zithrans had never witnessed. His actions strengthened the queen's rule and further cemented his position within the court. By the end of the week, Marcus had not only proven his competence but had earned genuine respect. The maids, once distant and cautious, now worked seamlessly alongside him. Lysera, observing these developments, recognized that the human had become an indispensable part of her court, a symbol of what could be achieved when human ingenuity met alien tradition. As he stood once more on the balcony, overlooking the crystalline city bathed in the light of Zithra's twin suns, Marcus reflected on the journey. He had entered this world as an outsider, underestimated and untested. Through courage, strategy, and adaptability, he had not only survived but had begun to thrive. Lysera's voice, soft yet firm, broke his thoughts. "Marcus, you have proven that humans are not to be underestimated. Continue on this path, and together we may achieve more than either of us imagined." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight and promise of her words. This was only the beginning. The world of Zithra was vast, filled with challenges and opportunities alike. And for the first time, Marcus knew that being human was not a limitation. It was a strength. He smiled, ready for whatever came next, knowing that he had earned not only his place in the palace but also the respect and loyalty of those around him. The future of Zithra, and perhaps even beyond, would never be the same again.